But her mother, Regina Ventura, got on the witness stand today and was talking about how her daughter asked her for money for help because Diddy was threatening to expose her with these sex tapes of a freak off.
Did Sean Diddy Combs really threaten Cassie's mother over her relationship with another rapper? Shocking new testimony reveals how a $20,000 demand and explicit video threats forced Regina Ventura into an impossible decision. What could push a mother to risk her home to protect her daughter? This bombshell story will leave you stunned.
Today's cross-examination focusing heavily on Ventura's allegation that Combs raped her in 2018 after they had ended their relationship, which he denies. The defense showing text messages between the former couple the day after the alleged rape, including one in which Ventura sent a heart emoji to Combs. Combs' team also trying to poke holes in Ventura's timeline.
That is not the gotcha moment that defense attorneys think it is. I mean, at the end of the day, witnesses are not great on specific dates, particularly when they go back years ago.
The defense also pointing to a text exchange between Ventura and Combs from 2012, in which she wrote, "I don't want to freak off for the last time. I want it to be the first time for the rest of our lives." At times today, the defense appeared to struggle to maintain momentum, facing frequent objections by prosecutors and regularly stopping Ventura's questioning to whisper together. Combs appeared to be actively involved, passing his lawyers notes. In a striking exchange with Combs' lawyers, Ventura saying, despite it all, "I don't hate him. I have love for the past and what it was."
We also saw musician Dawn Richard take the stand. She said that she witnessed Combs be violent with Ventura over the course of their relationship. I just want to remind everyone that Combs denies all of the allegations against him. Back to you.
The defense is showing text messages between the former couple from the day after the alleged rape, including one in which Ventura sent a heart emoji to Combs. Combs' team is also trying to poke holes in Ventura's timeline, but that is not the gotcha moment the defense attorneys seem to think it is. At the end of the day, witnesses are often not great with specific dates, especially when events go back years. The defense also pointed to a text exchange between Ventura and Combs from 2012, in which she wrote, "I don't want to freak off for the last time. I want it to be the first time for the rest of our lives." At times today, the defense appeared to struggle to maintain momentum, facing frequent objections from prosecutors and regularly stopping Ventura's questioning to confer in whispers. Combs appeared to be actively involved, passing his lawyers' notes. In a striking exchange with Combs' lawyers, Ventura said, "Despite it all, I don't hate him. I have love for the past and what it was."
Nope. Very surprised by that, but Regina Ventura spoke out about an email she received from Cassie in December 2011 that said Diddy threatened to release FO tapes of Cassie after he learned that she was dating kid Cuddy. Cuddy? Cootie?
Cuddy. You got it.
It is Cuddy. Okay. Now I'm like, did I do it wrong? I constantly keep correcting myself. I was physically sick, Ventura said. I did not understand if the tape threw me. He was trying to hurt my daughter. Diddy had threatened to release one video on Christmas Day. Disgusting. She testified that Combs wanted $20,000 for the video. Ventura said Combs was angry that he had spent money on Cassie and that she was with another person. My God. Meanwhile, he's out there with everybody in the world. We took a home equity loan, and that was the only way we could get the money. So she paid him? Oh, my God. Good thing she got this money from the settlements. Easy. Combs' bookkeeper sent Regina an email with wiring instructions, she said. This is key. Combs' bookkeeper taking the money bribe, the extortion claim. This is massive. I'm going to pause.
Who handled the finances of Mr. Diddy?
Rico Law. I need a Rico Law sample. We're finally getting there.
And the thing is, anybody who has been following along at home about this whole thing, this does potentially, we don't know, they were not named. I cannot say this, but there's been a lot of looking into TriStar Entertainment, Lou Taylor and all of that, who has worked with Diddy for a very long time to do with his books. This is very interesting. And it does appear that they have the records of this, that this did happen. So that's great.
The fact that there's an email from Sean Combs' bookkeeper to buy the video, which basically is an extortion threat. I'm going to release this tape if you don't pay me. That's extortion, guys. And now a criminal enterprise because his employees are doing it. With wiring instructions, she said, so she went to the credit union and then wired the money from her and her husband's account to the bad boy account. Regina said Regina said she did it because she was scared about my daughter's safety. She said for about 4 or 5 days later, the money was returned to her account, but she did not have any communications with Combs about it. So he then gives the money back, I guess, realizing this was a big, stupid mistake. But you still did it, Diddy. Diddy did it. Not a good look, my man. She also spoke about photos she took of Cassie's injuries, which the jury saw. Where I'm not going to show you those guys because they look awful, but it's legit. Cassie's not a victim. Go eat shit. She also mentioned that an interaction with Mia, who I do think we're going to hear at some point, and an incident where Diddy stole Cassie's phone and she called the cops. The defense did not ask questions of Regina. That's wild. They're like, no questions.
Yeah.
We're not even engaged.
I mean, how do you even cross-examine someone when it's like, I have proof that you extorted me. I sent you the money after your bookkeeper sent me an email saying how to do it. Then you sent it back. There's no debate that this happened. I have the receipts. Are you going to yell at me for trying to protect my daughter?
Did Diddy cross a line that no one could have imagined? In 2011, Cassie was at the height of her relationship with rapper Kid Cudi, which, according to claims, was the breaking point for Diddy's patience. At the time, Cassie was closely tied to Diddy both professionally and personally, making her budding romance with Cudi a potential threat to their dynamic. It wasn't just jealousy, it was about control, or so the allegations suggest. He allegedly discovered the relationship and wasn't about to stay quiet. What followed was a sinister threat aimed not just at Cassie, but at her family. According to Regina Ventura, Cassie's mother, Diddy took things to a dark and personal level. He allegedly claimed he had explicit videos of Cassie that could ruin her reputation. Imagine the weight of those words, not only the potential for public humiliation, but the devastating impact it could have on a young artist's career and future. But what made the situation even more sinister was who the threat was directed at, her mother. Regina testified that Diddy demanded $20,000 as the price to bury these videos, threatening their release if his demands weren't met. It wasn't just a threat to damage Cassie's image, it planted fear directly in her mother's heart. For any parent, this would be an unimaginable scenario. Regina, a woman who was neither a celebrity nor part of Hollywood's ruthless power games, was suddenly thrust into a nightmare. As a mother, all she wanted to do was protect her daughter. But this wasn't just about emotional support or offering words of comfort, it was something far more tangible, with a seemingly impossible price tag. And here's the kicker, Regina didn't have $20,000 on hand, which made Diddy's demand even more suffocating. The threat wasn't limited to her daughter's peace, it reached into her home, her finances, her very sense of stability. The emotional burden Regina carried must have been immense. For hours, maybe days, she likely replayed the threat in her mind, weighing her options and wondering if there was any way out. Any mother would feel rage, fear, and despair all at once. Yet what's even more heartbreaking is the detail of how Diddy's demand forced her into action, an action that came with its own risks. To meet the $20,000 demand, Regina made the desperate decision to take out a home equity loan. This wasn't something she could afford to do, it meant putting her own home on the line. She risked everything to keep her daughter safe. And here's where this story gets even darker. This wasn't just a financial decision, it was emotional warfare. Regina faced an impossible choice: allow these threats to hang over her family's heads or take a devastating step to erase them. It was a sacrifice no mother should ever have to make. But as heavy as it was, this was only the beginning, because the lengths she went to for her daughter showed just how high the stakes
were. It was
truly
very
were.
interesting. It was a little bit of a surprise because everybody's still talking about Cassie's testimony from last week, but her mother, Regina Ventura, got on the witness stand today and was talking about how her daughter asked her for money for help because Diddy was threatening to expose her with these sex tapes of a freak off. And so Regina Ventura, the mother, what she did was she got a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, on her home for $20,000 and gave that $20,000 to Diddy to try to keep him from releasing that video, that very disturbing video, I'm sure, of her daughter. And
we also heard from Cassie's mother, who testified about a payment that she wired to Diddy after Cassie told her that he was threatening to release 2 sex tapes. Cassie's mom said Diddy asked her for money around that same time to, quote, recoup money that he had spent on her daughter. The prosecutor asked, quote, Why did you go to the bank and take out a $20,000 loan? Cassie's mom said, I was scared for my daughter's safety. She was asked what she needed $20,000 for, and she said, to pay Sean Combs. And when she was asked why she needed to pay Sean Combs, she testified, because he demanded it.
And I think that was something that was just nobody expected that, because people were like, wait a minute, she gave him $20,000. And the reason for it was all because she had cheated on him, and he wanted his money that he claimed he had invested in her from, feeding her, paying her rent and all of these types of things. That was the number that he came up with. So that was pretty cruel.
The mom was fearing that he was going to release these sex tapes.
Yes, and that's her daughter. And, she was aware, obviously, of the situation. So there's questions about that. But it's just, when it's a mother, a parent's going to do anything for their kid.
Yeah, and I think she didn't get cross-examined either, right? So she just did her testimony and she was out.
And that was
she was
it.
on very short time.
Exactly.
When faced with a threat of this magnitude, most people wouldn't know what to do. For Regina Ventura, the stakes couldn't have been higher. She wasn't dealing with a simple demand, she was staring down a world-famous music mogul, someone with immense influence and the resources to back up his threats. But she wasn't just a mother grappling with fear, she was also a woman blindsided by a problem far outside her world. And worse, the clock was ticking. The price tag, $20,000. The cost of doing nothing? Her daughter's safety, her dignity, and their peace of mind. It was a burden too heavy to ignore. Regina didn't have $20,000 casually sitting in her bank account, not many people do. But when a demand like this lands in your lap, you'll go to almost any length to find a way to meet it. The idea of taking out a home equity loan must have been daunting, a decision she likely agonized over for hours, if not days. She knew what was at stake, her home, her financial security, the foundation of her family's future. A roof over their heads was about to be leveraged, all in a gamble to protect her daughter from a man with far more wealth and power than she could ever dream of challenging. Imagine sitting in a bank, pen in hand, about to sign papers that you know will plunge you into debt, not because you made a bad choice or fell on hard times, but because someone gave you no other option. It wasn't just money Regina was handing over, it was a piece of her own stability, her safety net, her freedom. It's hard not to think about how Diddy's alleged actions stripped away her control, leaving her feeling powerless. Despite knowing she was being manipulated, she likely replayed those threats in her mind, hating every part of what she was being forced to do, but knowing it was the only choice. Signing those loan papers must have been an emotional ordeal, a moment layered with desperation, anger, and determination. And here's where her actions reveal so much about the kind of person she is. Regina didn't crumble under the weight of this impossible situation. Instead, she stepped up, taking on the financial risk, the stress, and the fear, because her maternal instincts told her she had no other choice. She prioritized Cassie's safety over everything, even her own security. She chose to fight back in the only way she could imagine at the time, cutting that $20,000 check while likely holding back tears. But here's the thing, this wasn't just about money. It was a sacrifice that left scars on Regina and her family in ways no dollar amount could ever reflect. The emotional cost of being forced into such a position can't be understated. And yet, her sacrifice was a testament to the depth of her love for her daughter. While Regina's desperate act speaks volumes, it's what Cassie thought about her mother's decision that adds another powerful layer to this unfolding story.
Today, interesting what he was talking about when he said he first encountered them. He didn't really know that this was Diddy. He didn't know who Cassie Ventura was, but then all of a sudden he was all in after a little bit.
All in, Richard, and he was all in, and he was also really in some ways it seemed helping the defense, because he was talking about how much Cassie enjoyed the sex, that it seemed consensual to him. He even used the word, she gave me her consent, and then the prosecutor was like, how do you know that? And he said because of the way that she was moving, when they were intimate. But there was a lot to him, because he said he was in the business as a male entertainer, a stripper, for about 30 years, almost 30 years, and that also a sex worker. He didn't say that, but they would do private sessions like that. He said most of the times he was with Cassie. He didn't see Diddy or her inebriated or kind of like too high. He wasn't offered drugs. He said he was offered a drink, and he saw what he thought was marijuana there. But Richard, the real thing about him that was so fascinating was the longer that he talked, he was under cross-examination by Xavier Donaldson, one of the attorneys on Diddy's team, and he started to ask him about this, what's your business like? What are you doing, as a male entertainer? And he said mostly it's like bachelorette parties, we'll go and do things just to, super flirt. I'm going to keep it PG with the grandmothers and the mothers there, and the mother of the bride or whatever,
right,
to make it a fun evening. But he said some shocking things. He said he had about 8 to 15 encounters with Cassie and Diddy, having sex with Cassie, and that most of it, except for the last two times, was unprotected. There was no protection. So that was pretty interesting.
In 2011, Cassie found herself in the middle of a situation that would have been overwhelming for anyone, let alone a young artist still building her career. At the time, her relationship with Kid Cudi was heating up, but behind the scenes, it was allegedly causing massive friction with Diddy. Cassie was signed to Bad Boy Records, and that professional connection reportedly came with a level of control that extended into her personal life. Diddy wasn't just a powerful figure in the music industry, he was someone whose influence could make or break a career. And when her romance with Kid Cudi crossed what he allegedly saw as a line, Cassie's world began to unravel. The emotional pressure Cassie must have been under can't be ignored. Knowing that your mother has to put her own financial security on the line to protect you is a heavy burden for anyone to carry. And in this case, it wasn't just a private family issue, there were layers to it that involved public humiliation, career risks, and a deeply unsettling power dynamic with someone she relied on professionally. Imagine being in her shoes, caught between a person you care about, a mother who's sacrificing everything for you, and a figure as powerful as Diddy allegedly holding all the cards. It's no wonder Cassie didn't speak out publicly at the time. At that point in her life, Cassie was transitioning from up-and-coming newcomer to a more established figure in the music scene. Songs like Me and You had already put her on the map, and she had gained attention not only for her music but also for her style and personality. Yet this scandal had the potential to destroy her momentum. If the alleged videos had been released, the fallout could have been devastating, not just for her reputation, but for her ability to keep growing as an artist. It's worth pointing out that the music industry is notoriously unforgiving, especially when it comes to women. And Cassie would have been painfully aware of how one wrong move, even if it wasn't her fault, could label her forever. But what's most striking about this period is Cassie's silence. While all of this reportedly unfolded, she kept her head down and stayed quiet, at least in the public eye. She's never been one to air her personal struggles, and her handling of this alleged crisis was no different. Was this silence a form of self-preservation? Was it a way of maintaining control when her circumstances felt so out of her grasp? It's hard to know for sure. But one thing is clear, it took resilience to endure everything without lashing out or breaking down in front of the world. Cassie's silence also speaks to how deeply entrenched the power dynamics were. Diddy's alleged actions didn't just affect her personal life, they reached into her professional sphere, where speaking out could have cost her everything. In that sense, her silence might not have been submission. It could have been strategy, and looking back at this, it's hard not to connect what she endured to the bigger claims that have followed Diddy's name over the years. This incident wasn't just personal, it may have been part of a troubling trend.
There was some criticism of that raid, particularly from extended members of the Combs family, about why did they need that big show of force? Why did they need, as he testified, as Agent Gannon, Homeland Security Investigations Special Agent Gannon, who's one of the leaders of this whole special group that they have.
Right.
He said that they had 80 to 95 law enforcement descend on that compound in March of 2024, and he said,
that day.
"Yeah, nobody can
Right.
forget it." And he said the reason was because they had, their intel basically had let them know there was security there, there was armed security there. It was a very complex, they have the blueprint and the schematics of the property, but he said they wanted to make sure that there was no danger to anybody, so they timed the raid. This was interesting. He testified they had a search warrant, but the search warrant, Richard, was. Are you okay?
Yes.
Okay. The search. We're on the streets. What can
Yeah, we're on the
and we're live.
edge here.
And we're live. That's why I have my sneakers on.
That'll go
you
viral.
got the fancy. You got the fancy.
I have
shoes.
my shoes. I know. I should put sneakers
You
on.
got your fancy shoes. Anyway, he so he was basically talking about the Homeland Security, the investigations, what they were doing. He said that usually they do these raids at about 6 o'clock in the morning. They did this one at 3:40 in the afternoon that day, because he said they wanted to make sure that most of the people in the compound were out of there at the time that they went in. I thought that was interesting. And what they found, Richard, I mean,
I know.
well, they show the closet, and there's a closet. First of all, the property is gorgeous. It's I've been to Star Island, not there, but been to Star Island, and it's spectacular. It's just like one of those amazing places. So you go, they open the door, the evidence photo shows this closet in one of the rooms. There's shelves on it, so I'm like looking at it, and I'm like going, what is this, like Sean John t-shirts or package of what is this? And he describes what's in there. He describes high heels, 7-inch high platform high heels, like dozens and dozens of them. He describes lingerie, like freak off essentials, and then he says there were also assembly parts for guns. And so under questioning about the parts, he says this is the upper receiver, this is the lower receiver. These are for AR-15 semi-automatic rifles. There were bullets that were there was ammunition, and then as the agent testified, that it's very simple to put it together. You put the two upper with the lower, there's a pin that you insert, and then you insert the magazine or pop the clip in, and then the it's ready to go. So there was a lot of concern about that. People were kind of gasping, honestly, when they heard that. But the number of things, and then of course there was baby oil they found, there was lubricant, all of these items from the freak off that we have come to know.
Is this just one shocking story, or does Regina Ventura's testimony fit into a bigger, more troubling pattern? This isn't the first time Sean Diddy Combs has faced allegations that paint him as someone who thrives on control and wields his power like a weapon. If you've followed his career closely, you'll know his name has come up multiple times in stories that suggest a darker reality behind the glamorous public image. For years, whispers of Diddy's alleged manipulation of women in his life have swirled within the industry. These allegations often follow a familiar thread: control, coercion, and the abuse of power, particularly against those in vulnerable positions. One name frequently tied to these patterns is Kim Porter, the late mother of 3 of Diddy's children. While she's no longer here to speak her truth, close friends of Porter have hinted at a tumultuous relationship. Multiple reports claimed Diddy exercised significant control over her life, with sources alleging he interfered in both her personal and professional decisions. Though she remained publicly silent about the specifics, these stories leave many wondering about what wasn't being said. And then there's the case of Misa Hilton Brim, another woman tied to Diddy during his early years in the industry. Misa has occasionally hinted at the power imbalance in their relationship, describing how difficult it was to find stability in a dynamic so heavily skewed in his favor. While her comments remain vague, they add another layer to this picture of a man who, by some accounts, maintained dominance in every aspect of his relationships, personal and professional. But women aren't the only ones to claim Diddy's influence comes with strings attached. Even collaborators and employees in the music industry have told tales of his iron grip. Take former associates from Bad Boy Records. For instance, several artists, including the Lox and Faith Evans, have spoken out about feeling trapped by Diddy's contracts and business decisions. While these issues may initially seem like standard industry disputes, the frequency of such complaints raises serious questions about his alleged obsession with control. Regina Ventura's testimony, however, gives this pattern a more personal and chilling angle than ever before. It's not just about contractual disputes or exerting influence to shape an artist's career. This is about threatening a family, extorting money, and leveraging private, intimate material as a weapon. It peels back another painful layer in a narrative woven with consistent stories of alleged exploitation. And while Diddy has built a reputation as one of the most powerful figures in entertainment, it's cases like this that force everyone to rethink what it took for him to get there. Industry experts often point out that power dynamics like these are deeply ingrained in the music world. The imbalance between a figure like Diddy, a man with nearly unlimited wealth and connections, and a young artist or an outsider like Regina Ventura creates a breeding ground for coercion. The question is, how many more stories like this remain hidden because the victims fear speaking out? For Regina, stepping forward may be a game changer. Her willingness to reveal her testimony adds weight to this disturbing conversation, highlighting just how much courage it takes to stand up against someone with such enormous influence. What happens next could signal whether these allegations spark something bigger, not just for Diddy, but for the industry as a whole.
Yeah, and I think everybody appreciates. There's still a sense of, at this point in the trial, of mutual respect on both sides. Because remember, Diddy's lead attorney, Mark Agnifilo, he's a former prosecutor and one of the top prosecutors in this very district, in the Southern District here of New York. So he's very familiar with how the courts operate. Diddy's defense team, they're trying to do as much as they can. They did score points, though. The witness, that the male sex worker, was Shay McCrae, Hayes, or whatever.
Sheree Hayes.
Sheree Hayes, thank you.
Go.
I'm close.
Yeah.
He was basically talking about how Cassie seemed to be enjoying the sex with him on a professional level, and that really doesn't.
Does that really help?
Yeah,
and
I think the thing we have to remember, a couple things. I think we have to remember that, everybody is innocent until they're proven guilty, because there's been such an unprecedented barrage of publicity about this case and Diddy, and the most salacious things are the things that are the biggest headlines. And I don't want us to miss the building up of the case, of what they have to prove,
right?
Step by step. And I think that's the whole thing. Is like, it's not about whether, what your idea or anybody's idea of sex trafficking is. It's about, what does the law say? What are the requirements, point for point, that they need to prove? And that's what the jury and the jury has been seeming very interested. They're very involved. Paying attention. So we'll see.
There's a lot to prove,
but
there's still a very long way to go. I mean, we have to remind everyone, and if you haven't been following this, you're only a week and a half in to when the actual opening statements to the first witnesses being called. So there's so much more. No one at this point could say this is a slam dunk case or it's not.
No, and also too, remember, all the witnesses that they're calling now, excuse me, the pollen. Yeah. All the witnesses that are calling now are witnesses that are being brought by the prosecution. So the prosecution is bringing these people in to try to prove their case. That's why the sex worker was such a surprise today, that he was seemed to be supporting them, but he was under oath. He had to say what was the truth. Yeah. So then remember, we're still going to hear. We haven't heard the defense case yet, which they kind of have hinted at, saying that it's going to be, domestic abuse, not sex trafficking, drug use, drug abuse, a lot of emotional issues due to the drug abuse and that type of thing. But we haven't heard their case. We don't know who they're going to call.
Yeah.
Clip 6. Diddy's legal team is stacked. His lead attorney, Mark Agnifilo, is a former top federal prosecutor, and he knows exactly how to plant seeds of doubt. Their argument? This wasn't sex trafficking, it was a dysfunctional, toxic relationship marred by drug use, emotional breakdowns, and poor choices, but not a criminal enterprise. And surprisingly, some of the prosecution's own witnesses, like the Punisher, may have actually helped that argument. The jury, meanwhile, has been sharp, attentive, and engaged. The judge, Arun Subramanian, has done something unusual, shortened lunches, kept a tight schedule, and even provided breakfast daily to keep things running smoothly. It's a small detail, but in trials like this, every moment matters. It's important to remember we're still early in this case. The prosecution has made its opening moves, but the defense hasn't even played its hand yet. What we've heard so far may only scratch the surface. What happens when the defense calls its witnesses? What happens if Diddy himself takes the stand? And what happens if more disturbing evidence, or more witnesses, emerge in the coming days? This isn't just about one man. It's about an industry where fame can mask abuse, where power can silence victims, and where even the richest, most powerful figures can be brought to court. Clip 7. What's next for Diddy, Cassie, and Regina Ventura? If these allegations spark further investigation, the fallout could be seismic. For Diddy, the potential legal and financial consequences are immense. Accusations tied to extortion, threats, and the exploitation of personal material carry far-reaching implications, especially in a world increasingly focused on holding powerful figures accountable. A single case like this can open the doors to more testimonies, as others may feel emboldened to step forward. The bigger question is, how much damage will his reputation sustain? Diddy has spent decades building an empire on his name, but scandals like this can tarnish even the most carefully protected legacies. The industry has seen it before. Once public opinion turns, endorsements fall through, business deals stall, and the influence that once seemed unshakable begins to crumble, but there's an air of uncertainty surrounding how this will unfold. Regina's testimony is damning, but will it lead to legal action? Could there be more evidence, more witnesses, or further claims waiting to surface? Often in high-profile cases, one revelation triggers a ripple effect. If anyone else who may have experienced similar situations under Diddy's control decides to speak out, it could amplify the pressure and widen the scope of this controversy. People want answers. They want to understand whether this story is isolated or part of a larger, long-standing issue. The public appetite for accountability, particularly in the Me Too era, has shifted dramatically, and cases against prominent figures are scrutinized like never before. For Cassie, this revelation complicates her narrative. She's spoken about empowerment in recent years, sharing a message of healing and growth. But this dark chapter of her life has resurfaced in a way that brings old wounds into the spotlight. The knowledge that her mother risked everything, her financial security, her home, to shield her from Diddy's alleged threats carries a deep emotional weight. How does this revelation affect their dynamic now? Does it add strain, or does it underline the bond they've always shared? On a broader level, Cassie's silence about much of this period could signal just how much power Diddy allegedly held over her life and career at the time. The industry response could set a significant precedent. Will other artists and professionals condemn Diddy, or will they stay quiet to avoid losing connections in an industry still dominated by gatekeepers? It's a test of how far the music world has come in addressing its power imbalances. For fans, it's a moment to demand accountability, the kind that forces people to confront uncomfortable truths about the systems that protect power over justice. Most recently, Regina's courage in testifying has already started conversations about abuse of influence in Hollywood. What happens next could depend on whether more people are willing to back her claims. And as this story continues to ripple outward, one has to wonder, what other stories might still be out there, waiting to be told? There's a certain kind of bravery required to speak out against someone like Diddy, a man whose influence reaches far beyond music. Regina Ventura's testimony isn't just about one mother protecting her daughter. It's a reminder of what's at stake when power is abused. Her story exposes the hidden sacrifices made to shield loved ones from harm, and forces us to consider the true cost of silence. How many more voices remain unheard, buried under fear or manipulation, as these allegations unfold? One question lingers: will this spark a larger reckoning? Because every story like this shines a brighter light on the truth, and demands that we finally look.